There have been tons of different ideas of what an endurance prototype is. However, with the regulations being so tight, design concepts have more or less converged. Still, there's been plenty of weird, wonderful, and forgotten prototypes that have graced the track at Le Mans, Daytona, and the rest of the world. Here are some of those that have graced us with their presence. As always, I'm sure there's plenty that I missed or forgot, so let me know in the comments below. Number 1. The Nissan GT-R LM Nismo. The most recent entry on the list, the Nissan GT-R LM Nismo, is best remembered as a categorical failure, yet it has developed some sort of a cult following who have fond, yet extremely brief memories of this thing. Nissan and chief designer Ben Bowlby really believed they could come up with a front-engine car that was quick and stable. The GT-R LM powered the front axle through a gearbox located in front of the engine. The thought was they could generate more downforce at the front, so they could trim out the rear wing for the long straights. But this concept just never worked properly. The driver's positioning was too far back as well, which hurt the overall balance, and this car could just never overcome the inherent problems with the design philosophy. It made its debut at the 2015 24 Hours of Le Mans, and immediately was off the pace. The 3-car brigade occupied the last 3 spots in LMP1 qualifying, some 20 seconds off the pole time. One of the cars even set a slower lap than the quickest LMP2 car. 2 of the cars failed to finish, and the one that did was so slow, it was not even classified as it failed to complete 70% of the race winner's total distance. And after this total disaster, the Nismo was shelved for good, and Nissan moved on from this freakishly proportioned prototype. Number 2. The Nardi Bisiluro 750. This car barely resembles a car. It looks like a 1950s F1 car fused together with a sidecar, and well, that's pretty much what it was. This car took to La Sarthe in 1955, and by all accounts this has to take the cake for one of, if not the weirdest race car of all time. If you stand directly in front of it, the engine was on the right and the driver was on the left. Forget any notion of weight transfer, balance, or anything like that. In Nardi's defense though, this was the era when throwing anything at the wall to see if it stuck was really the name of the game. I'm not sure anyone else really ever took that idea to this extreme though. A 55 horsepower BMW 750 engine sat opposite the driver. Both were placed into missile-like pods with the radiator in the middle. Built on a Fiat 500 chassis, it weighed just under 1,000 pounds. Lost in the shuffle of the ill-fated and tragic 1955 race, the Bisiluro was reportedly so light and underpowered that the air coming off a passing Jaguar D-Type was enough to send the Bisiluro off track and out of the race. For sure, this is one of the ugliest and weirdest cars ever built. Number 3. The Cadillac Monster. Briggs Cunningham, like many drivers in his day, came from aristocratic roots and decided to tackle the world of high-level sports car racing. Attempting to enter the 24 Hours of Le Mans, Cunningham bought 2 Cadillac Series 61s to the 1950 edition of the race. One of the cars would be stock, yet the other would feature heavily modified bodywork. Designed by aeronautical engineer Howard Weinman, the prototype Series 61 was incredibly strange looking, yet because the chassis, engine, and suspension were all stock, it was allowed to race. Of course, not much testing went in this car once it had been designed in the wind tunnel, yet it caught the eye of the French crowd, who nicknamed it the Monster. It looked like something out of a sci-fi comic, yet the car actually did end up finishing the race. In fact, the car did extremely well at top speed on the long straights. However, Cunningham crashed it on the second lap and had to dig himself out of the sand trap by hand. Damaged by the crash, performance was affected, but he brought the car home in a respectable 11th. Cunningham went on to take 2 class wins at Le Mans during his career, but never would he start the race in such a striking car as the Monster. It never returned after 1950. Number 4. The Cadillac Northstar LMP. Staying with Cadillac, we have the Northstar LMP, which raced at Le Mans and in the American Le Mans series. This one does not fall so much on the weird side, but rather totally forgotten. The Cadillac brand may be a staple in prototype racing today, but at the turn of the millennium, they had long been out of the game at the top class of endurance racing. GM was still focused with the Corvette program, yet the allure of fielding a prototype was just too much to ignore, and Cadillac was chosen as the brand to represent GM. Riley and Scott would run the ALMS team, while Dams was put in charge of the European arm of the project. It was an open-top prototype with a 650 horsepower V8, which was plucked from the Oldsmobile Indy Racing League engine, then modified to include a twin turbocharger. The body itself is pretty typical for the era, and the only thing that really set it apart as a Cadillac was the sticker of an early 2000s Cadillac grille on the nose, which admittedly did look kind of silly. But in their defense, it was a quick, cheap, and light way to signify to viewers that it was supposed to be a Cadillac. For that, I really can't fault them too much. The second version of the car came in for 2002, but the reliability problems were never solved, and GM shelved the entire project after that season, refusing to sell the cars to privateer teams. The Northstar LMP never won a race. It could only muster a handful of podiums in the ALMS. GM realized their error and recommitted their effort on the much more successful Corvette program that existed in the GT classes. The third time around for a Cadillac prototype has been the charm, as they have become synonymous with the modern IMSA GTP class, and recently the car won its first WEC race at Interlagos. Number 5. The DeltaWing. I'm sure this was the one that popped into everyone's heads when you read the title and saw the thumbnail, and for good reason. When IndyCar was looking for a new chassis around 2009, design ideas went all over the place. One radical proposal was called the DeltaWing, from designer Ben Bowlby with the backing of Chip Ganassi. The car got its name from its radical shape. Vastly different from any of the other designs, it soon became apparent that IndyCar was not going to select it, even though it had the approval of one of its biggest team owners. However, the idea in their mind was simply too good to pass up. They were approved to run as a Garage 56 entry at Le Mans, with Nissan providing engines and funding. Man, what is it with Nissan and wacky prototypes? Anyway, the 2012 edition of the race saw the DeltaWing make its debut, and it went pretty well until it became involved in an accident with one of the Toyota LMP1s about 75 laps in and retired from the race. The DeltaWing eventually found a home back in America, in both the ALMS and the reunified IMSA Championship after 2014. Even though it was slow out of the gate, and never was a world beater by any stretch of the imagination, by 2016 it had become much more competitive in IMSA, even taking the lead of the Daytona 24 Hours that season before it hit a stationary car unsighted, which ended its hopes of glory. With IMSA's new DPI regulations for 2017, the DeltaWing was placed in the dustbin of history. Prototype racing has not been as strong as it is currently for many years. We can only hope that more and more manufacturers take up the challenge of competing in the top class of the WEC and IMSA. It will be fascinating to see what designs up-and-coming engineers can develop well into the future. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.